Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, joined here on set with Jessica Ramirez. I also have with me Joseph Scott Morgan. Big day for you. We're not going to be live in any trials, but we have three big cases to talk about. So let's get started. Okay, so what just happened? The jury found Rodgers guilty, but guilty of second-degree murder, the lesser charge. And even they answered no to the question if they thought he used a weapon. So they don't think that he was the one who used the weapon. Now, they also, they found him not guilty of conspiracy, but they did find him guilty of the lesser charge of burglary of trespassing. Now, this is interesting because he could face life in prison, which is interesting considering Wright Jr.'s plea agreement, pleading guilty to second-degree murder, same charge, he got 25 years in exchange for testifying against Rodgers and Sievers, and this man could now get life in prison. Does that seem fair? We're going to break all this down. First, Jessica, I want to come to you. That decision, what does that tell you about where the jury's mind was at?
I think that they were very fair and taken into account that he was not the master plan. And I also think that they did not believe the person that did get the best deal that's going to get 25 years. And I think they really showed that in their conviction.
Joseph, it seems to us that, I mean, it doesn't even seem it, it's what they said. They don't believe he's the one that murdered her. They don't believe he's the one that took that hammer, beat her and beat her and beat her to death, as Wright Jr. said. Is there something about the crime scene, something about the evidence that you've seen where it just raised that reasonable doubt as to him being the man who did this?
I have to tell you, Jesse, in a case like this where you've got this kind of impassioned overkill kind of thing, I've never seen anybody do an initial strike and then back off and hand off the responsibilities to someone else. The reality is that the person that actually swung this hammer and did this damage was testifying up there on the in the jury box before all of us, and he admitted that he initially struck her. And this convoluted story that he put together relative to her status and all of this sort of thing, and all of a sudden, the defendant in this particular case, now the convicted Jimmy Rodgers, you know, he's the guy that just kind of enters onto the stage as another player, and in the play and begins wailing on this woman. Yeah, there's something that's a bit out of balance here.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I think what it was saying, Jessica, was that they not only didn't believe Curtis Wright, they didn't believe Taylor Shawmaker. Because if we recall, Taylor Shawmaker jumps on the stand. She says that Rodgers confessed to her and said, I killed Teresa Sievers, and that he coined the phrase, Jimmy the Hammer. Now, what's interesting about that is that the jury asked for a readback of her testimony. That means, I mean, the way I'm looking at it, they didn't believe what she was saying.
Well, I don't know if they didn't believe what she was saying. I think that he was definitely found guilty. He committed the crime for sure, but it was very difficult to have Wright come in, and he just cannot be believed. If anything, I think that Wright is the one that he was not believed. He's the one that probably hammered this woman. He knew this woman. Mr. Wright didn't know her, so I just don't think that he was believed, and I think the jury got it right. I think that they're taking all the considerations, and all the fact witnesses, all the witnesses, and taking piece by piece and considering what really happened here. Now,
the other part about this, Joseph, is it was very difficult for the defense to get out of the fact that he made that trip. I mean, they said he made that trip. Based upon all the forensic data, the cell phone data, he was there. And I guess the question for the jury was just how much was he there? So they were able to say, we believe you went into that house, but you were just not an active participant. Am I understanding that? Because they didn't believe that he had this second hammer and finished off the victim. So he was just standing there. And at what point did he know he was going to be a part of this, right?
Look, you show up with this. They even took time to kind of put it in kind of old terms, case the joint. You know, they were looking around this area, they were becoming familiar with it. So that goes to this kind of premeditative event where they're thinking about that they're going to go in and do harm. And that he would just kind of sit back passively as a little lamb, and just watch all of this kind of unfold before him. It's kind of odd to me. But yeah, we have this. And we displayed it, I think, last week in our coverage here on Law and Crime of that kind of electronic, those electronic breadcrumbs that lead back from Missouri all the way down. Yeah, there you go, man. I tell you what, out of every bit of evidence in this trial, this piece of evidence right here was just absolutely striking.
Right.
Absolutely striking to follow these crumbs and the journey that these guys took down there to just execute this woman.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about that in a second, about how they committed this crime. But I got to ask you the million-dollar question now. Is it fair? Is it fair for Jimmy Ray Rodgers, who didn't take a plea deal, who tried to fight this, he gets convicted of second-degree murder, and we just got word that the Assistant State Attorney, Cynthia Ross, says the state will be seeking a life sentence for him, second-degree murder. And yet Wright Jr., who took that plea deal for second-degree murder, the same charge, gets 25 years, when the jury just came back and felt that Rodgers wasn't the man who actually killed Sievers, but it was this man. Is it fair?
No, it's not fair, and I definitely have a problem with that. And usually that's real life, right? Whoever pleads first gets the best deal, and whoever stands their ground and wants a trial doesn't always get the best deal. That's why I have to really respect this jury. They really, again, Mr. Rodgers is culpable. He was part of the crime. He traveled there. He was there. He didn't stop it. He's definitely as culpable.
But with sentencing set for November 18th, is there a way that fact, which I just said, this plea deal, and that the jury's decision, they don't believe he did it, will that affect the sentencing? Could he get 25 years?
I think so. I think the jury will probably take all of this into consideration. They did so when they convicted him and found him guilty of the lesser degrees.
Okay, so we have a lot to break down. This is just the beginning part of Rodgers, and we're going to get more into it right after our break. When we come back, we're going to play you some of the closing arguments and see how we got here. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.